That happened. That really happened. We are not going to have a Supreme Court that will overturn Roe versus Wade. There will be no more Antonin Scalias and Samuel Alitos added to this court. We're not going to repeal health reform. Nobody is going to kill Medicare and make old people in this generation or any other generation fight it out on the open market to try to get themselves health insurance. We are not going to do that. We're not going to give a 20% tax cut to millionaires and billionaires and expect programs like food stamps and kids' health insurance to cover the cost of that tax cut. We're not going to make you clear it with your boss if you want to get birth control under the insurance plan that you're on. We are not going to redefine rape. We are not going to amend the United States Constitution to stop gay people from getting married. We are not going to double Guantanamo. We are not eliminating the Department of Energy or the Department of Education or housing at the federal level. We're not going to spend $2 trillion on the military that the military does not want. We are not scaling back on student loans because the country's new plan is that you should borrow money from your parents. We are not vetoing the DREAM Act. We are not self-deporting. We are not letting Detroit go bankrupt. We are not starting a trade war with China on Inauguration Day in January. We are not going to have, as a president, a man who once led a mob of friends to run down a scared gay kid to hold him down and forcibly cut his hair off with a pair of scissors while that kid cried and screamed for help. And there was no apology, not ever. We're not going to have a Secretary of State, John Bolton. We are not bringing Dick Cheney back. We are not going to have a foreign policy shop stocked with architects of the Iraq War. We are not going to do it. We had the choice to do that if we wanted to do that as a country. And we said no last night, loudly. Now, to be fair, if you are a conservative or if you were rooting for the Republicans, a few things did go your way. Republicans did not lose that Senate seat that they might have lost in Arizona. John Kyle's old Senate seat goes to another Republican, to Jeff Flake. Also, Republicans did not lose that other Senate seat they might have lost in Nevada, the old John Ensign seat that was given to Dean Heller. It stays with him. It stays Republican, just barely. And while President Obama carried 28 states last time, he carried 25 or 26 states this time, depending on how Florida goes. So that means Republicans did lose everything else, but they got back Indiana and also North Carolina. So it was not a totally hopeless night for Republicans. Also, hey, remember the crazy Thaddeus McCotter seat in Michigan, where Thaddeus McCotter screwed up and the Republicans ended up having to run this reindeer herder, Santa Claus impersonator guy for that seat? A guy whose own brother says he's crazy and that he will end up in jail if the people of Michigan are crazy enough to elect him? That guy won. Yeah, the shirtless reindeer guy won. So the Republicans have him. Big picture in the House, thanks mostly to redistricting, the Republicans were not in danger of losing the House, and they didn't lose it, even though the Republican majority appears to have shrunk there, and even though they did get the reindeer guy. But in terms, honestly, of what went well for Republicans in this election, that was pretty much it. It is a short list. You want to talk about what went well on the other side last night? Here, I'm actually going to pause for a second to give you a chance to hit pause on your DVR in case you want to go make popcorn or something, maybe mix a drink. You are going to want to settle in for this, so get comfortable. Go ahead, I'll give you a second. Okay, you back? Ready? Here we go. So last night, the Democratic senator who was supposed to be the most endangered incumbent in the country not only won, she won by 16 points. Republican Senator Scott Brown of Massachusetts, who was so stuffed with hedge fund money that he burped credit default swaps. Scott Brown lost by a lot to the nation's foremost authority on the economic rights of the middle class. After marriage rights for same-sex couples were voted down in state after state after state for years, more than 30 times in a row, this year, all change. In Maine, they voted on marriage equality and they voted for it. In Maryland, they voted on marriage equality and they voted for it. In Minnesota, they were asked to vote against marriage equality and Minnesota refused to ban it. In Washington state, the vote is not called yet. They are still counting the vote, and we will be watching it closely. But if you are on the pro-gay right side in Washington state, it should be noted that it is looking pretty good. In Iowa, anti-gay activists were sure that they were going to turf out a judge for ruling in favor of marriage equality. They had done it before to a bunch of other judges. They had been successful every time they had tried before, but not this one, not this time. Judge Wiggins in Iowa keeps his seat. Nevada elects its first African-American congressman this year. America gets our first openly gay United States senator. America gets our first ever Asian-American woman senator from Hawaii. Her seat in the House, I should note, gets filled by this woman, a Democratic Iraq War veteran. I'm going to tell you right now that her name is Tulsi Gabbard because she is on the fast track to being very famous someday. Tulsi Gabbard. Speaking of Iraq War veterans, Tammy Duckworth, veteran helicopter pilot. She lost both of her legs in Iraq. She is going to Congress, and she is sending home the opponent who mocked her for her war record, Joe Walsh. California relaxed its 3 strikes you're out law and rejected a law to cripple the political power of unions. Decriminalization of marijuana was approved in Washington and in Colorado. The astonishing tide of dark money spent against Democratic Senators Jon Tester in Montana and Sherrod Brown in Ohio turned out to be pointless. Both those Democratic senators won. They held on to their seats. Democrats won a Senate seat in North Dakota, of all places, a seat that nobody thought they could win. All of these states that had this hugely aggressive total Republican takeover from the 2010 elections, Ohio and Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Virginia and Florida, all of those states that went so red in state government in these past couple of years and that then had these big fights inside their states over how Republicans were governing there. In Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and we will see about Florida. Last night, not only did Republicans lose the presidential election in every single one of those states, Republicans lost the Senate race in every single one of those states, too. Sherrod Brown, Tammy Baldwin, Debbie Stabenow, Bob Casey, Tim Kaine, Bill Nelson. Depending on Florida, a Democratic sweep of the presidency and definitely a Democratic sweep of the Senate races in those states that the GOP was so excited to have supposedly turned red in a way that was going to stick. Last night, Democratic women swept every major office in New Hampshire. Last night, California Democrats won a Democratic supermajority in the state House and in the state Senate. Not just majorities in California, but supermajorities, wherein if the Republicans don't turn up, any of them, any day at work, nothing will be different in California. They're completely legislatively irrelevant. Allen West lost his seat. More women got elected to the U.S. Senate than at any time in U.S. history. The Republican presidential nominee and vice presidential nominee both lost their home states. Missouri and Montana and West Virginia chose Democratic governors. West Virginia chose its first gay state legislator. So did North Dakota. West Virginia and North Dakota? Yes, seriously. Joe Lieberman's old seat went to a real Democrat in Connecticut. The proportion of young people voting compared to 2008, it went up. Same with African Americans, up from 2008. Same with Latinos, up from 2008, not down, up. If you are a liberal or if you were rooting for the Democrats, last night was a very, very, very big night. And oh yeah, this happened. President Barack Obama, yes, will go down in history as our nation's first African American president. But he will also go down in history as the most successful Democratic presidential candidate since FDR. President Bill Clinton got reelected too, I know, but only Barack Obama got reelected with not just big electoral college margins, but also with majority wins in the popular vote. Twice. The guy who predicted this outcome almost exactly is Nate Silver, of course, who writes the political statistics blog 538 at the New York Times. For accurately predicting, it appears, the exact outcome of the race, and I mean down to every single state. We'll see about Florida. Nate was, of course, pilloried on the right and by right-leaning Beltway media types, including Politico.com, for having the audacity to print what his poll averages told him was about to happen. But Nate was right. The polls were right. Even without Florida being decided, we now know that President Obama won in pretty much exactly the way the state-by-state polls said he was going to win. He won with more than 300 electoral votes. It was not magic. It was just math. Math that was completely invisible to the political right.
I believe the minimum result will be 53-47 Romney, over 300 electoral votes, and the Republicans will pick up the Senate. I base that on just years and years of experience.
The wild card in what I've projected is I'm projecting Minnesota to go for Romney.
I think Ohioans vote with their wallets. That's why I think Romney's going to win on Tuesday.
Carl, I'm actually with you. Except I think you're more optimistic. I got this, Romney, 3 points.
I think Ohio is going to be a squeaker, maybe an 80, 100, 110,000 vote margin, but I think the Republicans are likely to take it.
Who's going to win this election? Charles Krauthammer, your best prediction.
Romney, very close, but he'll win the popular by, I think, about half a point. Electoral college, probably a very narrow margin.
It will be the biggest surprise in recent American political history. It will rekindle a whole question as to why the media played this race as a nail-biter, where, in fact, I think Romney is going to win by quite a bit.
I am now predicting a 330 electoral vote landslide. Yes, that's right. 330 electoral votes.
Yes, that's right. No, that's not. Wrong, 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 wrong. But Republicans and conservatives plainly really believed this stuff. I mean, they were talking each other into it a little bit, but it's not like they were faking it. They were so sure they would win. They were so sure that these polls must be wrong and that they must be right. And when the real math of the real world came barreling out of the dark at them last night, they hid from it. They could not believe it.
Fox News can now project that President Obama will win the crucial battleground state of Ohio.
That's the one we've all been waiting for. And there's a question now about, what does that mean, panel? I mean, does that mean
that's the presidency?
Do you believe that Ohio has been settled?
No, I don't. I got the director of the Ohio campaign for Romney on the other end of the line, refreshing the page every few seconds. I think this is premature. We got to be careful about calling things when we have like 991 votes separating the two candidates and a quarter of the vote yet to count.
Well, folks,
thanks.
So maybe not so fast.
Here's what we're going to do. Karl Rove said that we should figure out what the deal is with this decision desk. The decision desk is in a different place. Megyn, I will escort you down the steps here so you can go interview them.
All right.
Watch your step.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't want to fall
there you go.
in front of all these millions of people.
Okay. Megyn is going to go to the decision desk and interview them.
They're way down the hall. So we'll do a little interrogation and see if they stand by their call. This is the decision desk. Now we're in the heart of the decision desk room. You tell me whether you stand by your call in Ohio, given the doubts Karl Rove just raised.
We're actually quite comfortable with the call in Ohio.
What do you make of it, Chris?
There just aren't enough Republican votes left.
Percent certainty.
99.95%.
Okay. All right. Well, there you have it.
Okay, Megyn. I've just called Karl back up from the, and he's coming up here to the desk. He's crunching numbers. He's writing furiously. He's pointing at Bill Hemmer. A lot of things are going on right now.
All I'm saying is that, look, we've had one instance where something was prematurely called. That seems to me to be a very early call. With
the folks at Obama headquarters in Chicago, they're not listening to Karl. They don't care about what Karl said.
Ohio really did go to President Obama last night, and he really did win. And he really was born in Hawaii. And he really is legitimately President of the United States, again. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics did not make up a fake unemployment rate last month. And the Congressional Research Service really can find no evidence that cutting taxes on rich people grows the economy. And the polls were not skewed to oversampled Democrats. And Nate Silver was not making up fake projections about the election to make conservatives feel bad. Nate Silver was doing math. And climate change is real. And rape really does cause pregnancy sometimes. And evolution is a thing. And Benghazi was an attack on us. It was not a scandal by us. And nobody is taking away anyone's guns. And taxes have not gone up. And the deficit is dropping, actually. And Saddam Hussein did not have weapons of mass destruction. And the moon landing was real. And FEMA is not building concentration camps. And UN election observers are not taking over Texas. And moderate reforms of the regulations on the insurance industry and the financial services industry in this country are not the same thing as communism. Listen. Last night was a good night for liberals and for Democrats for very obvious reasons. But it was also possibly a good night for this country as a whole. Because in this country, we have a two-party system in government. And the idea is supposed to be that the two sides both come up with ways to confront and fix the real problems facing our country. They both propose possible solutions to our real problems. And we debate between those possible solutions. And by the process of debate, we pick the best idea. That competition between good ideas from both sides about real problems in the real country should result in our country having better choices, better options than if only one side is really working on the hard stuff. And if the Republican Party and the conservative movement and the conservative media is stuck in a vacuum-sealed, door-locked spin cycle of telling each other what makes them feel good and denying the factual lived truth of the world, then we are all deprived as a nation of the constructive debate between competing, feasible ideas about real problems. Last night, the Republicans got shellacked, and they had no idea it was coming. And we saw them in real time, in real humiliating time, not believe it even as it was happening to them. And unless they are going to secede, they are going to have to pop the factual bubble they have been so happy living inside if they do not want to get shellacked again. And that will be a painful process for them, I'm sure, but it will be good for the whole country, left, right, and center. You guys, we're counting on you. Wake up. There's real problems in the world. There are real knowable facts in the world. Let's accept those and talk about how we might approach our problems differently. Let's move on from there. If the Republican Party and the conservative movement and conservative media are forced to do that by the humiliation they were dealt last night, we will all be better off as a nation. And in that spirit, congratulations, everybody. Big night.